Share how to learn English. Hi Tom, I've been learning English for a while now, but I still feel like I'm not making much progress. Do you have any tips on how to study more effectively?
Absolutely, Katie. Studying a language can be challenging, but there are definitely some things you can do to make it easier.
That's great to hear. I've been struggling with remembering new vocabulary and grammar rules.
Those are both really important parts of learning a language. One thing that helped me was to make flashcards to practice new vocabulary. You can also use apps or online resources to help you memorize new words.
That sounds helpful. But what about grammar? I feel like I'm always getting confused about which verb tense to use.
Grammar can be tough, but it's definitely something you can improve with practice. One thing that helped me was to focus on one grammar rule at a time and practice using it in different sentences. Once you feel comfortable with that rule, you can move on to the next one.
That's a good idea. Do you have any other tips on how to improve my English?
One thing that can be really helpful is to immerse yourself in the language as much as possible. You can watch English language TV shows and movies, listen to English language music, and read English language books and news articles.
That sounds like fun. But what if I don't understand everything?
It's okay if you don't understand everything at first. Just try to focus on the overall message, and if there are specific words or phrases you don't understand, you can always look them up later.
That's good advice. What else can I do to improve my English?
Another thing you can do is to practice speaking and writing as much as possible. This will help you feel more comfortable with the language and improve your fluency.
That's a good point. But what if I don't have anyone to practice with?
There are actually a lot of online resources, like language exchange apps or websites, where you can find someone to practice with. This way, you can get feedback on your pronunciation and grammar and learn from someone who is a native speaker.
That sounds helpful. Is there anything else I should be doing to improve my English?
One thing that can be really helpful is to set goals for yourself. For example, you could aim to learn a certain number of new words each day or to practice speaking for a certain amount of time each week. This will help you stay motivated and focused on your language learning.
That's a great idea. Thank you so much for all these tips, Tom. I really appreciate it.
No problem, Katie. Good luck with your language learning.
English listening practice. Hey Tom, I heard you're really good at listening in English. Can you give me some tips on how to improve my listening skills?
Sure, Katie. I'd be happy to help. Listening is a really important part of learning any language, and there are definitely some things you can do to improve.
That's great to hear. I've been struggling with understanding native speakers, especially when they speak quickly.
Yeah, that can be tough. One thing that helped me was to listen to a lot of different types of English so that I could get used to different accents and speaking styles.
That makes sense. Do you have any recommendations for where I can find listening materials?
There are a ton of options out there. One thing you could do is watch TV shows or movies in English and try to focus on understanding what the characters are saying. You could also listen to podcasts or audiobooks, or even just listen to English language music and try to follow along with the lyrics.
That's a good idea. What about when I don't understand something? Should I just keep listening and try to figure it out, or should I pause and look up the words?
It depends on what you're trying to achieve. If your goal is just to get a general sense of what's being said, then it's probably fine to just keep listening and try to figure things out from context. But if you really want to understand everything, then it can be helpful to pause and look up any unfamiliar words or phrases.
That's helpful to know. What else can I do to improve my listening skills?
Another thing that helped me was to practice listening actively. Instead of just letting the audio wash over you, try to actively engage with it. You could try to summarize what you've heard, or even try to predict what's going to be said next.
That's a good tip. I'll definitely give that a try. Is there anything else I should be doing?
One thing that can be really helpful is to find a language exchange partner, someone who speaks English as their first language and is learning your native language. You can practice your listening skills by listening to them speak and asking them to repeat or explain anything you don't understand.
That's a great idea. I'll have to see if I can find someone like that. Thanks so much for all these tips, Tom. I really appreciate it.
No problem, Katie. Good luck with your listening practice.
How to practice speaking English. Hi Tom, I've been trying to improve my speaking skills in English, but I'm not sure where to start. Do you have any tips or advice on how to improve my speaking?
Sure, Katie. Speaking is a really important part of learning a language, and there are definitely some things you can do to improve.
That's great to hear. I've been struggling with forming sentences and expressing myself clearly.
Yeah, that can be tough. One thing that helped me was to practice speaking as much as possible. Even if you're not sure if you're saying things correctly, the more you practice, the more comfortable you'll become with the language.
That makes sense. But how do I practice if I don't have anyone to talk to?
There are actually a lot of ways you can practice speaking on your own. One thing you can do is to record yourself speaking and listen back to it. This can help you identify any areas where you need to improve.
That's a good idea. But how do I know if what I'm saying is correct or not?
You can use online resources like language exchange apps or websites to find someone to practice speaking with. This way, you can get feedback on your pronunciation and grammar and learn from someone who is a native speaker.
That sounds helpful. But what if I'm too nervous to speak in front of someone?
It's natural to feel nervous, but it's important to remember that making mistakes is part of the learning process. It's better to practice and make mistakes now than to wait until you're perfect to start speaking.
That's true. Do you have any other tips on how to improve my speaking skills?
Another thing you can do is to listen to native speakers and try to imitate their pronunciation and intonation. This will help you sound more natural when you're speaking.
That's a good idea. But what if I don't understand everything they're saying?
It's okay if you don't understand everything. Try to focus on the overall message, and if there are specific words or phrases you don't understand, you can always look them up later.
That's helpful. Is there anything else I should be doing to improve my speaking?
One thing that can be helpful is to practice speaking in different situations. For example, you could practice ordering food at a restaurant or asking for directions on the street. This will help you feel more confident when you're speaking in real-life situations.
That's a good idea. Thank you so much for all these tips, Tom. I really appreciate it.
No problem, Katie. Good luck with your speaking practice.
Practice reading English. Hi Tom, I've been trying to improve my reading skills in English, but I'm not sure where to start. Do you have any tips on how to practice reading effectively?
Sure, Katie. Reading is a great way to improve your English skills, and there are definitely some things you can do to make it more effective.
That's great to hear. I've been struggling with understanding longer texts and unfamiliar words.
Those are both common challenges when it comes to reading in a foreign language. One thing that helped me was to start with simpler texts and gradually work my way up to more complex ones.
That makes sense. But how do I know which texts are appropriate for my level?
There are actually a lot of resources online that can help you find texts that are appropriate for your level. You can try websites like Newsela, which offers news articles at different reading levels, or sites like ESL Library, which has a wide variety of reading materials for different levels.
That's helpful. But what about when I come across words I don't know?
It's normal to come across words you don't know when reading in a foreign language. One thing you can do is to look up the word in a dictionary or translation app. But instead of just looking up the definition, try to also see how the word is used in context. This will help you understand its meaning better.
That's a good idea. Do you have any other tips on how to improve my reading skills?
Another thing you can do is to try to read as much as possible, even if it's just a little bit each day. This will help you build up your reading stamina and make it easier to understand longer texts.
That's a good point. But what if I'm not interested in the texts I'm reading?
It's definitely important to find texts that interest you, as this will make it more enjoyable and easier to focus. You can try reading about topics that you're interested in or finding books or articles by authors you enjoy.
That sounds like a good idea. Do you have any final tips on how to improve my reading skills?
One final tip is to practice reading out loud. This will help you improve your pronunciation and fluency, as well as your comprehension. You can also try reading along with an audiobook or recording of someone reading the text.
That's a great idea. Thank you so much for all these tips, Tom. I'm excited to start practicing.
You're welcome, Katie. Good luck with your reading practice.
Practice writing English. Hi Tom, I want to improve my English writing skills. Do you have any tips on how to practice writing effectively?
Hi, Katie. Sure, I have a few tips that could help you. Writing is an important part of learning any language, so it's great that you want to improve your writing skills.
Thanks, Tom. I'm just not sure where to start.
One of the best things you can do is to start writing regularly. Set aside some time each day to write something, even if it's just a short paragraph or a few sentences. This will help you build up your writing skills over time.
That makes sense. But what if I'm not sure what to write about?
You can try writing about things that interest you, or practice writing about different topics that you might encounter in everyday life. For example, you could write about your hobbies, your family, or your experiences studying English.
That's a good idea. But what about grammar and vocabulary?
Those are important parts of writing, but don't worry too much about them when you're first starting out. Focus on getting your ideas down on paper first, and then you can go back and work on grammar and vocabulary later.
Okay, that makes sense. But what if I'm not sure if my writing is good or not?
One thing you can do is to ask a friend or a teacher to read over your writing and give you feedback. They can help you identify areas where you need to improve and offer suggestions for how to do so.
That's a good idea. Do you have any other tips for improving my writing skills?
Another thing you can do is to read a lot of English writing, whether it's books, articles, or essays. This will help you get a sense of how English sentences are structured and how different words are used in context.
That's a good point. Do you have any final tips for me?
Yes, one final tip is to practice writing in different styles, such as formal and informal writing. This will help you become more versatile in your writing and prepare you for different writing tasks.
That's a great idea. Thank you so much for all these tips, Tom. I'm excited to start practicing my writing skills.
You're welcome, Katie. Remember to keep practicing and don't get discouraged if it takes time to see improvement. Good luck with your writing practice.